One is what has been happening in the media, the people you see in front of you, the Archbishop's Word, Ferren Hafuji, the Council for the Advancement of the Constitution by Sipho Pityana, all of these things that are happening, and also in academic institutions, most notably the Stellenbosch Institute for Advanced Study, where they began to debate and discuss vigorously the issue of humanism, the need to restore humanity in our society. All of these things have been a major influence for us, Jaco and Fanny, in deciding on a topic. And another very important influence for us goes back to my class ones, with my students, a master's course on narrative trauma and forgiveness. We visited the Holocaust Center, and we were taken around by Marlene Sieberts, and the main message running throughout the tour and the discussions with the students afterwards and with others was the issue of the moral imperative to speak. As we exit the Holocaust Center, there are words quoted from the Archbishop about this very issue, implying that if we are silent, then we are headed for a precipice in our society. And so my students are very much part of this topic that we have today. Well, here are a group of other students who are leaders from the institutions in the Western Cape region. To the right, not of politics, but of the table, are all the leaders of the SRC. The first one, Amanda, is the leader of is the president of the SRC at the University of Cape Town. Next to Amanda is Rainy Moses, who is the president of the SRC at Ziba College. Then we have Jan Khwele, who is next to Rainy, who is the SRC president at Stellenbosch University. Finally, we have Noncedo Bulana, who is a community leader in Khayelitsha, an organization in Khayelitsha. When we tried to contact Noncedo on the telephone, there was a lot of noise, and she said, "Call me later, I'm involved in the march." So, ladies and gentlemen, the topic today is a moral responsibility to speak. We want to ask the young people what's on their minds, what concerns them about what's going on in the country today, what are the issues that exercise their minds. And we've asked Amanda to speak first and to tell us in her own words what exercises her mind, what is of concern to her. Amanda, are the minds working? Good.
Can everyone hear me? I think initially when we talk about civic responsibility, I think at least my initial reaction was to think about people's practical circumstances or rather their physical circumstances. And I think there is much to be said about the practical circumstances of South Africans. I think especially think of issues such as unemployment, access to a good quality education, the fact there are so many child-headed households. I mean, you can go on and on about the practical circumstances of South Africans. But I wish to touch on something different, because I do believe that is likely to come up here today anyway, and I'd like my contribution to be about something else. My concern really today is that of the hearts and minds of South Africans. What's going on internally? And this might sound like quite a lofty topic, but I think it's one that's very, very important to have, and I think it's central in the work that is being done here. I had the pleasure quite recently of having a conversation with Jonathan Jansen, who's the Vice Chancellor at the University of Free State. Now, I'm not going to go into necessarily whether there's a pro to universities right about race relations, but the central thrust of the conversation, or at least where he thinks the university needs to be headed, is that there's a conscious inquiry into humanness being made, and just that just that phrase for me really stuck out, about a conscious inquiry into humanness. And I think, and I asked myself, is that happening in the rest of the country? Are we inquiring about the humanness of one another, about what it means just to be human, not to be black or white or any other kind of qualification to our identity? And another point that, I mean, this just really made it stand out even more in my mind, but there was actually something else that had really got me thinking around this discussion. And that was an article by Samantha Weiss. Now, probably a lot of people might have come across it before. I didn't actually read her actual article. I believe she's an academic in the philosophy department. I'm not sure which institution. And I didn't read the exact journal article, which I believe her views were largely based on. I read a piece written by Gobodo-Madikizela, I think it was in the Mail and Guardian. So that's largely where I came across his views. And the central thrust seemed to be that white South Africans should feel some sort of guilt or remorse about what has happened, and from that flows how they should then behave in South Africa today. And I was quite troubled by this piece. Firstly, I felt personally depressed that there was some white South African who goes around living her life on the sidelines because she's doing me a favour. Well, I mean, I'm black, and apparently this is for the benefit of black South Africans, and I wish I could go up to her and say to her, contribute, participate, be yourself. I mean, I have no interest in you being on the sidelines of society, so I was quite depressed by that. But that got me thinking about identity in general. What do we mean when we define ourselves by common attributes? So if you define yourself first and foremost as a white South African or a black South African, or even as a woman, what does that mean? Because then obviously those identities will be different for each person. You can't really appropriate what is essentially a common good and define yourself by it as an individual. It's impossible unless then you come up with certain norms and criteria for what it means to be a black person, to which all black people must prescribe to in order to also call themselves black. Otherwise, if there isn't that common list of things, then you can't possibly say, as a black person, I feel this and this, or as a white person, I think this and this. The only thing you can really say is, I, Amanda Ngweni, as an individual, think the following. But lastly, just to get on to my last part of the contribution, is I think there's some intellectual laziness in saying, well, then we should endeavour to see ourselves first and foremost as South Africans. Because I think that's still quite a nationalist and parochial way of identifying oneself. I think we have to encounter each other as individuals. And I don't think South African is good enough, in fact. It's lazy. And I think there are moments to be proud as South African. When it comes to sporting games, I suppose it's fun to be behind the box or behind the fun of fun. We can do it when it's not really harmful, but I think it is harmful when you walk around as if that's a defining feature of your character to be South African, because what does that mean? I mean, it's not really, because I'm also South African, yet we're probably very, very different. And then I want to just end off with a point that someone I admire very much made to me. I won't share who it is because it might bias the point, so I won't say who it is. But this person said to me that the failure of the apartheid government was actually twofold. It was both a failure in discriminating people, but the other failure of the apartheid government was actually in not discriminating people. It said that all black people are the same, they have the same attributes, and are capable of exactly the same things. They qualify people as a group. So in a very real sense, a failure of the apartheid government was to discriminate. And I think today we run a very real danger of making that mistake, of actually failing to discriminate in terms of saying, I see you as an individual and what that means to see people as individuals. And I think that word individual has become contaminated in South Africa, as if it inherently means that you're self-interested or greedy, and it's often linked with perhaps capitalism and other sorts. I think people attach a lot to people thinking of themselves as individuals. But I think it's very important, if we are to understand the gains that we have made post-1994, to value what it means to be allowed to be in a country where the individual is just as important as the group.
Thank you very, very much, Amanda. You're raising very critical questions, and one for me that we can come back to is, isn't some of what is going on now with the corruption and the greediness and the materialism in our society, isn't that part of this over concern with who the me is and in enriching the self? But you're raising a very interesting point about what are the various ways of seeing who we are in this community of ours that within which we want to create humanity. Rain, you want to share with us what your thoughts are?
I would like to.
Remember that we spoke earlier about how to time and to make sure that... Remember that conversation? Okay, over to you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I remember listening to the State of the Nation address earlier this year, where main concern seems to be around job creation. I do think that it definitely is important for South Africa. However, we also, I recognize that it's not exactly, the job market is not exactly easy to enter into, especially for the youth of today. I think there are many stories of us who finish school and then aren't sure exactly what to do. So my main concern is really just around the area of education. And what I would like to see is really a country where the youth realize their full potential and actually use their full potential. And how exactly in our system can we make that happen? So to give an example of this, I'm from Tibu Education, and we have leadership and self-development as a course there, which is something unique. It may be practiced in other institutions, I'm not sure. But during the week, we actually have a period where we have quiet time. And here in the space, we reflect, we meditate, clearing our minds, and this obviously has a positive impact on how we interact with people. Also, not only that, but we have leadership as a course where we actually learn about leadership and how to become effective leaders. And we have the space in order to practice that by starting our own small businesses, by leading our organizations. So my real question is, how does the panel see that this is necessary? If for at least most institutions, if not all of them, do they feel it's necessary to have practices like this? And if so, how long do you think it will take in order for us to get there?
Thank you. The voices of youth, ladies and gentlemen, the issue of jobs and their absence and the lack of jobs, young people qualifying but not getting the positions that they need to give them dignity. Those are the issues that we're hearing about today. Jan, what's on your mind?
Honorable Emeritus Archbishop Tutu, DVC.
At least someone is recognizing him.
This is
Part time.
This is quite a special moment, so I should make the most of it. DVC Professor Nambu, all protocol observed. Fellow panelists, students, and then ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin by thank you for this opportunity. I believe that the topic of today's discussion is very relevant, and I think never before has there been such a call on each of our citizens to address the topics that I'm about to discuss. I like short statements because there's less to contest and defend, so therefore I'm just going to dive in. Today I'm deeply concerned about the challenges that we face of inequality and poverty in our country, brought about by a broken past and perpetuated by our present. I'm concerned about the higher unemployment rate in our country, the short-sightedness of our unions, the sentiment of our employers to save labour, and the employment environment created by our government. I'm concerned about yes, I'm quite loud, isn't it? I'm concerned about our education system, the schools where we have 900 pupils, of which 700 are in grade 8 and 9.